In the early years of the 13th century, a shadow began to grow across the world. A shadow born in the endless grasslands of Central Asia, where the wind never stops and the horizon stretches farther than the eye can see. For centuries, the tribes of the steppe had lived harsh and brutal lives, fighting each other for survival. But then something changed. A man rose from the chaos. His name would become one of the most feared in human history: Genghis Khan. Before him, the steppe tribes were divided. After him, they became the most terrifying war machine the world had ever seen. Genghis Khan united the Mongol tribes with iron discipline, ruthless strategy, and a vision of conquest that stretched far beyond the steppe. He did not simply want to rule lands. He wanted to dominate the world. The Mongol army was unlike anything the medieval world had seen. Every warrior was a master horseman trained since childhood. They could ride for days without stopping, sleeping in the saddle and surviving on almost nothing. And their greatest weapon was not their swords, it was their bows. Powerful composite bows capable of killing from incredible distances. While riding at full speed, Mongol archers could turn their bodies and fire arrows behind them with deadly precision, an ability that shocked every army that faced them. But weapons alone did not make the Mongols unstoppable. Their true power was strategy. Mongol generals studied their enemies carefully. They gathered intelligence, learned the terrain, and attacked with terrifying speed. Often they would pretend to retreat, fleeing the battlefield in apparent panic. Their enemies, believing victory was close, would charge forward. And that was the moment the trap would close. Suddenly, Mongol riders would turn. Arrows would darken the sky, and the pursuing army would find itself surrounded. City after city fell before them. Kingdoms collapsed in months that had stood for centuries. The Mongols destroyed powerful empires across Asia. The Jin dynasty in northern China shattered. The Khwarezmian Empire was completely annihilated. Entire cities were erased from existence. Some chroniclers wrote that rivers ran red with blood. Whether exaggerated or not, one thing was certain: the Mongols brought terror wherever they rode. And even after the death of Genghis Khan, the expansion did not stop. His successors continued the conquest with relentless determination. Among them was a powerful ruler, Genghis Khan. Under his command, the Mongol Empire expanded even further. Armies moved westward across the vast plains of Eurasia. Nothing seemed capable of stopping them. One by one, the kingdoms of Eastern Europe began to hear terrifying rumors. Stories carried by merchants, refugees, and travelers spoke of an army that moved faster than the wind. An army that could appear without warning, destroy entire cities, and vanish again into the horizon. They spoke of warriors who feared nothing, warriors who never stopped, warriors who never lost. At first, many European rulers did not believe these stories. How could a distant nomadic people threaten the powerful kingdoms of Europe? But soon, the rumors became reality. In the late 1230s, Mongol armies invaded the lands of Kievan Rus. City after city burned. Ryazan fell, Vladimir fell, and Kiev, one of the greatest cities of Eastern Europe, was reduced to ruins. The Mongol generals were now looking further west, beyond the forests, beyond the rivers, beyond the mountains, toward the heart of Europe itself. And by the year 1241, their armies were ready. Two massive Mongol forces began moving toward Europe. One army marched south toward Hungary. Another rode northwest into the lands of Poland. Their path would lead to a battle that would change European history forever. A battle where knights and warriors from across the continent would gather, hoping to stop the unstoppable. That battle would be remembered as the Battle of Legnica, and in that moment, the fate of Europe would hang by a thread. But Europe had no idea just how powerful the Mongol war machine truly was. By the year 1241, the Mongol war machine had reached the gates of Europe. For decades, they had conquered kingdoms across Asia. Cities had burned, empires had collapsed, and armies, far larger than theirs, had been destroyed. Now the Mongol generals were looking toward the west, toward the lands of Poland and Hungary, toward the heart of medieval Europe. The Mongol invasion did not come as a single army. Instead, it came as several coordinated forces, each moving with terrifying speed. One army marched south into Hungary, another moved northwest into Poland. Their goal was simple: divide Europe's defenses and crush every army that tried to stop them. Soon, the Mongols reached the rich lands of Silesia. Villages were burned, towns were destroyed. Refugees fled westward, spreading fear across the region. The rulers of Europe realized that the threat was real, and they began to gather their armies. Leading the European forces was a powerful noble, Henry II the Pious. Henry understood that the Mongols had to be stopped before they could advance deeper into Europe. He called upon knights and warriors from across the region. Polish forces answered the call. German knights joined them. Even warriors from religious military orders came to fight. Together they gathered near the city of Legnica. Their army was made up mostly of heavily armored knights, the elite warriors of medieval Europe. These knights believed that their powerful cavalry charges could break any enemy. For centuries, armored knights had dominated the battlefields of Europe. But the Mongols were not a typical enemy. They fought in ways the Europeans had never seen before. On the morning of April 9th, 1241, the two armies finally met. The battlefield near Legnica was tense and silent. European knights stood in heavy armor, their banners flying in the wind. Across the field stood the Mongol army, thousands of mounted warriors, calm, disciplined, and ready. The battle began with the sound of Mongol horns. Almost immediately, Mongol horse archers spread across the battlefield. They moved quickly, riding in wide circles around the European forces. Then the arrows began to fall. Wave after wave of arrows rained down on the knights. The Mongol riders never stayed in one place. They attacked, withdrew, and attacked again. European soldiers struggled to respond. Their heavy armor protected them in close combat. But against fast-moving horse archers, it became a disadvantage. Still, the knights of Europe were brave warriors. Soon they launched a powerful cavalry charge. Armored knights thundered across the battlefield, hoping to smash through the Mongol lines. For a moment, it seemed the attack might succeed. The Mongol front lines began to retreat. The Europeans believed the enemy was breaking, but this was exactly what the Mongols wanted. The retreat was a trap. As the knights charged forward, the Mongol army suddenly turned. Hidden units appeared on the flanks. Arrows once again filled the sky. The European army found itself surrounded. Confusion spread across the battlefield. Units became separated. Communication broke down. The Mongols attacked with ruthless precision. One by one, the European forces were overwhelmed. In the chaos of the battle, Henry II the Pious continued to fight with his men. But the Mongol assault was relentless. Eventually, the Duke was killed in the fighting. His death shattered what remained of the European resistance. The army collapsed. The Battle of Legnica was over. The Mongols had won another devastating victory. The road into Europe now seemed open. Cities like Vienna, Prague, and perhaps even the great capitals of Western Europe could soon face the Mongol army. To many people in Europe, it seemed that nothing could stop them. The Mongol Empire appeared unstoppable. But history was about to take an unexpected turn. And a single event, thousands of kilometers away, would change everything. After the devastating defeat at the Battle of Legnica, fear spread across Europe. The Mongol army had crushed the forces of Silesia and its allies with terrifying efficiency. To many observers, it seemed that the Mongols could now march freely across the continent. And in truth, there were very few armies capable of stopping them. At the same time, another Mongol force had achieved an even greater victory further south. In Hungary, Mongol armies defeated the forces of King Bela IV at the Battle of Mohi. The Hungarian army was shattered. The kingdom was left defenseless. For the next months, Mongol riders swept across Hungary, destroying towns and villages across the countryside. Europe stood on the edge of disaster. Many chroniclers believed the Mongols would soon advance deeper into the continent. Cities like Vienna and Prague could have become their next targets. Some historians even suggest that Western Europe might have faced invasion. The Mongol Empire had the speed, the discipline, and the military power to continue the conquest. And yet, something unexpected happened. At the very moment when the Mongol armies seemed unstoppable, they suddenly began to withdraw. To the people of Europe, it must have seemed like a miracle, but the real reason was far away, deep inside the Mongol Empire. In December of 1241, the great Khan of the Mongol Empire had died. His name was Ögedei Khan. As the ruler of the empire, his authority extended across one of the largest territories the world had ever seen. According to Mongol tradition, the princes and generals of the empire were required to return east after the death of a great Khan. A new ruler had to be chosen, and that decision required the presence of the most powerful leaders of the Mongol world. Among those leaders were the commanders leading the invasion of Europe. If they ignored the summons and remained in the West, they risked losing their political power. So despite their victories, they had little choice. The Mongol armies began to turn back. Instead of advancing deeper into Europe, they started their long journey east, across the vast plains, across the rivers and forests, back toward the heart of the Mongol Empire. For Europe, this sudden withdrawal changed everything. The terrifying invasion that had destroyed so many cities suddenly stopped. The Mongol forces disappeared as quickly as they had arrived. Europe had survived, not because its armies had defeated the Mongols, not because the continent was strong enough to stop them, but because events far beyond Europe's control had forced the Mongols to leave. It was a rare moment in history where the fate of an entire continent depended on a single event, thousands of kilometers away. Had the great Khan lived longer, the Mongol invasion might have continued, and the map of Europe today could look very different. The Mongol Empire would remain one of the most powerful forces in world history, stretching across Asia and shaping the future of entire civilizations. But the moment when Europe stood closest to conquest came in the year 1241. At battles like Legnica and Mohi, moments when the Mongol war machine proved that it could defeat even the strongest armies of medieval Europe. And for a brief moment in time, the future of Europe hung by a single thread. A thread that could easily have been cut. But history chose a different path.